Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water Sewer Commission meeting for Thursday, October 5th, 2017 will come to order. I'll do the invocation and Dave will lead us in the pledge. Commissioner Ford. Please rise. Dear wise and loving Father, let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for your life itself and the measure of help we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance, for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work, for the honor and bearing of appropriate responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you and the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us even so, from your boundless gracious nature. We ask you to guide our work today to help us rejuvenate the Brunswick-Glynn County water sewer systems. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is our public comment period. Do we have any?
Yes, sir, we do. We have Mr. Rick Paget to discuss street flooding, and you can take the podium next.
Okay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here. I just stopped by to see what went on here. I'm fairly new to the Brunswick area. I moved in about 2 months after Matthew last year. Would have moved in 2 months sooner, but Matthew. The street that I purchased a house on at that time flooded. I'm at 107 Cypress Mill Court, off of Old Cypress Mill, just north, I guess, or northwest of Altama. And needless to say, it flooded again a month ago with Irma. It certainly wasn't a storm surge issue, except to the extent that things I don't know about in terms of storm surge not allowing streets to drain properly. I guess I understand that. But I'm not sure exactly who is responsible between the Joint Commission and the county in terms of being able to maintain adequate drainage of streets. So it's a facilities or sewer capacity, drainage capacity issue. I've had 2 hits, I feel, in 2 years. I got a category 1 coming in possibly this weekend or Monday. I want to know whether to board the place up again to no avail, because the water will get in as it did both times. So basically, I'd like to know if that is within the commission's purview, and if
I'll
so.
provide you an answer on that. There's a stormwater system and there's a sewer system. Ideally, the sewer system is a closed system so that only sewer goes through it, not stormwater. What you're talking about is stormwater.
It's a stormwater.
And the county has responsibility for stormwater removal. And I believe that's under Mr. Dave Austin on the county staff. Is that correct?
I think yes,
Okay.
Okay, that's
So
fine.
that's where you would need to go.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
No, I think that is in the county, not city. But you're correct, that is stormwater.
It is in the county, yes.
And the city is, as well as the county, we maintain those systems. And sometimes when high tide comes, it's hard for us for that water to go anywhere, so it sits. Realizing that we are, our flood level here, or our below flood level, the plane where we sit at, causes issues too as well. We've had this issue with College Park subdivision. It floods every time, and every time they rebuild or get things back in stride, I guess, back on lane, back in place, then it floods again. So that's the issue. And the issue deals with the city or the county, where we must maintain those systems or do something about it to clean out the ditches, clean out the storm drains, whatever like that. So That could be one of the reasons. I don't know yet, but I'm sure that we can find out. So,
I'll follow up with the county.
Yes.
And all you,
that'd be fine.
anywhere with that.
That'd be fine.
There. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're at committee updates. We did not have a compliance and legislative committee. We did have a facilities committee, but I think everything was covered in facilities. We covered in the updates that are in the discussion portion of the agenda. Finance did not have a meeting. Human Resources and Safety had a meeting. Commissioner Harvey?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to report that during our meeting we talked about recruiting and termination, and we have established a few guidelines as to the report that will be presented to us next. Our next meeting will have some additional information on there, which should allow this commission to be able to notice what employees we are hiring. Identify the employees we're hiring. Also, we talked about the staffing of the deputy director and the director of operations position, and we are going to, for that position, the director of operations, we're going to have that go back to our finance committee, and then we will make a disposition on that as well. We also talked about when we shall no longer need the services of the individual who's serving as interim deputy director. And while a date was thrown out there, October 31st, I would really like to know, when does our pay period end? So Mr. Finance guy, when does our pay period end?
Our next pay period ends Sunday, this
Okay, and then after that it'd be what?
would be two weeks following that Sunday.
Before, after the 31st?
One ending on the 8th, and then the next one would end on the 22nd of October.
22nd. Okay, well, it's been determined that we will, that position, interim deputy director, would expire on October 31st. And does that present a problem for you,
No,
as far as
that's no problem.
in between the pay period, doesn't it?
No, and doesn't make any difference.
All right. Also, one of the reasons why behind that is because we have hired our new deputy director, and he's on board now, and so that's why we are terminating that interim deputy director's slot. We also discussed about our appeal process, realizing that we need to discuss that a little more, so that will be coming back on my next Human Resources Safety Committee meeting. So there's nothing to present towards the full commission at this time, sir. That concludes my report.
Thank you. I'd like to add one thing.
Sure.
We've had 2 safety incidents this whole year,
Yeah.
which I think was important. And that the staff and the superintendents will be commended for keeping our people safe. And we hope we keep doing that. Thank you.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I would like to ask a question on, going back to the interim deputy director and the new deputy director. Letting the interim go on October 31st, will that allow enough time for him to download all his corporate knowledge to the new one?
I think so.
We actually have some business that is kind of a holdover from just prior to the new deputy director showing up. In addition, there's some minor orientation opportunities to give our deputy a little bit of time to get some familiarized with some things. They're supposed to be developing a schedule to work out what needs will be between now and the end of the month, and actually will be scheduled time, but we do need to finish up on the one more hot fire that we've got that's lingering.
One other thing on the interim deputy director, I'd like to, from my behalf, thank the colonel for his service both as chairman of this board and his work as deputy director. In my mind, he's a hero in a number of different ways, and I think his leadership has been exemplary and his work is greatly appreciated, as is your own. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next, public information and customer relations has not met this month, so we'll move on to approval of the minutes from September 21st, 2017. As I recall, we did not have an executive session.
I move to accept the minutes of September 21st, 2017 regular meeting, so we can then.
I second it.
Okay. Any questions, gentlemen? If there are no questions, I'll call the question for approval. Please raise your right hand. It's 6 yea votes. Okay, we're at the discussion. And Mr. Sellers, customer service update.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Let's go ahead and start off the discussion about customer service. We're talking about numbers. We've talked about some vision statements in the past, but it's helpful now to see where we were within the past 6 months prior to the billing system conversion and where we are now as a result of that. And from January 1st to May 1st, I just looked at that period of time initially, we were presented with 9,302 calls. So in addition to the payments that were taken, we could pull that up, but at this point, the dissatisfaction in customer service is not coming from our ability to handle the walk-in payments. That has been a problem for a number of years, and customers that come in, especially on the 1st and the 15th on account of getting government checks and whatever payroll, that tends to be the bulk of the payments come in on or about the 1st and the 15th. So sitting that discussion aside as far as the walk-in traffic and just talking about the phone calls, because they're interrelated in so much that somebody that's on the line processing customers that walk in has typically focused on taking care of those walk-in customers at the expense of those that are calling in. Prior to August 14th, when we started to make some changes up front, the majority of the phone calls were answered by Luke Schwalm, the customer service supervisor, and then peppered in, some of the calls were being answered by the customer service representative. So it hasn't been a healthy balance, and we're trying to balance that out now where Luke is able to take care of the customers that walk in, sign up for new service, and handle situations that might be called complaints or sometimes just confusion as far as how the billing is going. That's going to be handled more now by Luke and then Olivia Cummings, who's moved over from the meter services division. A few changes, but moving right on to the numbers since I said I would. 9,302 calls from January to May. Of that number, 6,900 were answered, and that's about a 74% success there. 1,093 were abandoned without being answered, so the hang-ups were about 12%. January to May, about 12% hang-ups. We received about 25 voicemail messages daily. That number fluctuates wildly. It's hard to tell from week to week, from day to day, how many voicemails are going to be left, but historically that number was fairly low and they were easily returned before the end of the business day. And that's including being able to count down your drawer and get out of the office on time. From June 1st to October 4th, customer service personnel were presented with 21,425 calls. We moved back to June because we had already started seeing the increase in call-in during the transition in billing systems prior to July 1st. Of that number, 7,683 were answered, about 36%. So we dropped from being able to handle 74% of the calls to about 36% of the calls. 4,500 calls were abandoned compared to 1,000 from the period before. So those calls weren't being answered. The hang-ups went from 12% to 21%. we received between 35 and 100 voicemail messages daily, which on the high end of that especially can't be reasonably returned by the end of the day. The push prior to August 14th and really prior to just a couple weeks ago was reduce overtime at any cost. The cost of that ended up affecting our customers as well, so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But nevertheless, if you just compare those two big numbers, 9,300 calls at the beginning of the year, after the billing system changed, 21,000 calls. So our call volume more than doubled for the two periods. And anecdotally, you might say, well, those are two different periods in time. Month to month, there wasn't that much of a change when we go further back into the call system. Prior or following a rate revision, obviously we always have an increase in calls, but with the perception that somebody's bill went up higher than normal. Anytime there's a rate revision, coupled with any other dynamic, any other variable, the commentary becomes my bill doubled. Well, it didn't necessarily double. There's a lot of variables that are going into play there, and some of which would be like the commentary we see on Facebook regarding the payments being applied late and slow, so it looks like the bill doubled and it just wasn't applied, or some people haven't paid their bill in months. Nevertheless, our customer service level went from 65% satisfaction, and this, by the way, is just within the call system. I'm only focusing on the MyTel phone system, the way that we track those numbers coming, the calls coming in. The satisfaction level went from 65% to 28% through no fault of the customer service representatives. They didn't change the way they did business. They handled the calls the best they could, but it wasn't necessarily the best route, because we've spoken about before in the past that somebody that's routinely coming in month to month to pay their bill, that's routine, but somebody that's calling in to report a service outage or a sanitary sewer overflow, that should be a priority that we handle in front of somebody that's just standing in line to pay their bill. But that philosophy has been hard to change in customer service over time, so we're still working on that. The rep needs to understand the need to take calls between customers when they're standing in the lobby. However, we simply changed too much too fast without giving careful consideration to the side effect. How is that going to affect our customer service level? From January 1st, 2008 up until August 14th, we hadn't made any change in our customer service representative count despite the growth that we've been experiencing since our founding in 2008. So dynamically, we've been increasing in customer base, but we still expected the same 4 people plus loop to be able to handle the influx of customers walking in or making phone calls. The increase in the number of payments that are coming in has also affected billing on the accounts receivable end. So it was helpful that we added, since August 14th, 2 new reps. We added Olivia, who's stationed in the center of the lobby, and then we added Tarina Jackson, a new customer service representative that started just after Hurricane Irma. So now we have, at best, 5 people at the counter, but we still are faced with people taking vacations, lunches, doctor's appointments. We're never going to see, realistically, 7 people always on the floor being able to handle customers, so it's going to be that kind of challenge. Now, though the recent changes that we've seen since July 1st then helped reveal our deficiency, and our customer service survey results have indicated that, the reality is that the heat's been building up just like the proverbial frog in the boiling pot of water. Just now we're seeing this steady increase, but it now has risen to a boil and we're really hurting. What do we do about that? Now we highly value the relationship that we have with our customers, and at least you've heard me say that we're seeking to have that philosophy that we would hope that our customers would choose to do business with us even if they had other options. That's a difficult thing to say right now because of the high dissatisfaction level. We made those changes July 1st and really brought some discomfort to our customer base. Some of the effects of these changes were predictable and some of them weren't. It's very difficult to say that some of the things that we're experiencing now are anyone in particular's fault. It was very complicated the way that some things have gone down. So let's talk about those things. We updated rates to meet the operational, administrative, financial needs. The overall increase was 13 to 14% for all customers, but other variables gave the impression of a much higher increase. When you get your bill, all you're looking at is the bottom dollar, and it's sure to go up more than 13 to 14% to some people. We changed the billing system. The upgrade was necessary, but the conversion process resulted in errors due to the timing between when the payments were posted to their account. We changed account numbers for some customers. Roughly 3,500 accounts were affected by a need to use new account numbers due to the billing system upgrade, which also caused a delay in processing some mailed-in payments. Some people were using online bank draft, and that was going to our off-site payment processor that processed the checks that were mailed in, and it would, by default, have the old account number on it. We didn't do a good job of warning people that that number would change. And in some cases, isolated cases, we would have account numbers that are duplicated from the old system to the new system, but they would have a different customer. Those are rare, but it did happen. We changed our online payment portal. The transaction fee actually dropped from $290 to $275, which nobody really bragged about, but the maximum payment amount was reduced to $200 per transaction. So we had customers that were faced with a $500 bill that would pay $200 once they realized that was the limitation. And then they would log back in and pay $200. And then they would pay the other $100. They'd be faced with 3 $275 transaction fees. We removed some useful details from the billing statement that we're working to reinstate. Because of the changes from one billing system to another, we had to remove that nice graph that showed the consumption over the past 12 months. And we had to remove an indicator that showed, told the customer if they might have had a leak. So it would monitor that leak code coming off the meters and give you a warning. We removed the information on the back regarding how the customer could pay by credit card, how that might be processed. We changed how we process those mail-in check payments. We moved from one on-site processor, we're in the process of doing that now really, one off-site processor of checks to another, which caused a delay of anywhere from 1 week to up to 3 weeks, as we had to manually process about 9,000 checks in-house for a short period of time. But that appears to be back to normal. We brought in 2 temporary staff members that were able to process those checks, and they're doing that as a box literally comes in the mail from Atlanta for us to process those checks. We're going to be shifting the mailing address from Atlanta to 1703 Gloucester Street for a short period of time, and then going right down to Orlando with the final vendor that's going to be processing the mailed-in checks. So we need to alert the customers using that newsletter that we've started sending out with the bills. So we'll inform them that if they're sending in, or processing rather, a bank draft, that where the, say, Bank of America has your information, that they're automatically sending this bill with the wrong account number to the wrong location in Atlanta. There's going to be a period of time where all 3 of those addresses are going to work, but it's not going to last forever. So we need to inform customers very clearly come November when the Flow newsletter goes out. Everybody's received that, by the way, all the customers? Have you seen at least a copy of that? It's very pretty. I worked really hard on that. I hope that you like it. But when that newsletter goes out, it's going to have to plainly say, please stop your bank draft, and then restart your bank draft with the new address, because otherwise your check may be delayed in posting. And you may get a bill from us that shows that you haven't paid in 90 days or whatever. But that's not necessarily true. We're just stalled in the processing of those payments.
Question on that, Jay. Can you interrupt just a second on communicating those things?
Yes, sir.
On communicating those changes.
Yes, sir.
While I understand we're putting the flyers in the bills, I know from personal experience, flyers and bills don't get read. We're going to do a press release and all that stuff.
Yes, sir. So we'll have to intentionally get the word out using the media, and if we don't do that, then we end up getting behind it as the commentary flies on social media. And speaking of social media, we were plenty vocal regarding Hurricane Irma. Everybody understood that we were getting services restored, but it was not communicated well that during that period of 7 to 9 days that we were not doing business as usual. One key facet of business as usual is meter services and billing. We weren't reading meters during the hurricane. We weren't billing during the hurricane. That caused an increase in the billing period. So customers were getting statements that appeared to be 20 to 25% higher through no fault of their own, and they were actually out of town. And in some regards, we had a lot of leaks that were the result of trees getting uprooted and breaking their service lines. But there's still not a good understanding of why the bill went up until you look at this, basically the small print that indicates that the billing period was another week longer than it usually is. A 5-week billing period, of course, is going to yield a higher bill. And of course, all of that assumes having no increase for that period of time that everybody evacuated. We well know that not everybody evacuated, so they were still using water during that period, even after we asked them not to. Our call volume and walk-in traffic has been high as a result of those changes and their side effects, and it's drastically reduced our customer satisfaction level. I hear it, our customer service reps hear it, you get phone calls throughout the night with people that are unhappy with the way that they're being treated. We see the customer service surveys that indicate that. We're monitoring social media that indicates that. So as a result, we would like to make the following changes effective immediately. We'd like to waive all late fees until January 1st, 2018. That would allow us to get back to normal on the processing of statements so that we're not assessing late fees on customers that have paid. We just haven't reflected that on their account. We will also only process cutoff for those accounts that are 90 days past due or have defaulted on established pay plans. We have two sets of customers in regards to default. We have those that are just a little behind, and we have those that are so far behind that prior to the July 1st conversion, we were in the process, thanks in no small part to Colonel Boland, in activating a more aggressive delinquent account policy. That shouldn't change just because of these circumstances, because while we're staffing up to try to meet some of these needs, and while we're bringing in temps, and while we're doing all of these changes that in some cases regard investment, we're not charging late fees. We're not charging cutoff fees. Something has to give at that point, otherwise we're letting money just walk out the door, and those people need to get caught up on their accounts. We're just talking about the delinquent account. If you owe more than 90 days worth of service, you will be cut off. But we would like to not cut off anybody that's just 30 to 60 days past due until we get caught up on all of these changes come January 1st. We've added that additional customer service representative in the lobby, which was helpful, and then transferred Olivia from meter services to customer service. We would like to meet the challenge of returning all voicemails left or emails sent to our account info@bgjwsc.org before the end of the day. And that doesn't mean 5 o'clock. That means that we may have to incur overtime charges, which we've discussed in the HR committee and finance committee and one of the commission meetings about the cost to pay overtime to an existing employee is overall lower than the cost to staff up. We would end up with not only a long-term hire decision, but also the fringe rates. It would end up costing us more than just keeping one of the customer service reps or as many as 5 of the customer service reps, a meter service technician that's capable of answering these calls, and then a billing representative that's able of returning these calls. It would be better to pay that overtime than to staff up for something that may be a short-term need. We'd also like to waive the cost to process payments online up to a balance of $1,000. We've discussed in the past that when we changed vendors, obviously the charge dropped. We were already charging that fee, but then there was a lot of discomfort from customers, which presently we have no more than 10% of our customers that pay online through the portal with their debit or credit card or even an e-check. There's the potential for us, at a minimum now, if we absorb that fee, to pay as much as $60,000 per year, guaranteed. That would be the cost of us absorbing the fee at our present payment load. Paymentus, our current vendor, projects that if we adopted that type of policy, that we may see an increase of up to 40% of our customers paying online. That could result in a charge that we would absorb of up to $200,000 thereabout, which gives me some pause, because it would be less expensive to hire another customer service rep, 2, 3, or 4, than to absorb that much of a fee. So the gamble would be, if we only do this for a short time and to see if that causes any change in the rate of usage, then that gives us an opportunity to see if it's long-term a good strategy, or if suddenly we have 3 times as many people paying online as pay by check, in the mail, or come into the lobby. We're really just cannibalizing the business from one payment method to another payment method, and we're paying them to do that, more or less. We'd have to raise the rates to accommodate a change in policy like that.
So I got a question. So you saying that for people to pay online, it's gonna cost us more money for them to pay online than it is for them to pay in person?
Optimistically, if we believe what Paymentus has projected, that we would have a 4-fold increase in the online payment processing, that we could end up with over $200,000 in fees that we would be paying. Realistically, what are the odds that that would happen? I can't predict that. So that's a tough thing to say. It's a tough thing to decide on based on just a projection. The demographics don't change. We still have the same customer base. Would we, by absorbing that fee, be begging people to pay by credit card online? Or would we be asking 90% of our customer base existing to absorb the cost or the benefit that only 10% are taking advantage of? There's a lot of room for debate there. I don't like the idea of subsidizing a fee that very few people use, that service.
But do we charge for the credit card use online now?
Yes, we do. $2.75 per transaction for every $200 block. But we don't charge when somebody walks into the lobby with a credit card. So, Mr. Donaghy, oh, sorry, go ahead.
First, if someone pays online through their payment portal, they pay their bill plus the $2.75. Customer pays that directly to payment. There's no cost to us, to the Joint Water Sewer Commission, for paying online as currently structured. The payments received at the customer service desk using either credit cards or debit cards, there's a percentage charged by the processor for that based on the number, and that's based on the number of transactions and the value of it.
Do our customers know that? You know, because it really kind of seems that it would encourage people to use the mail.
Yes.
It's cheaper to use the mail.
But it doesn't cost the customer anything to walk in and pay it. It doesn't cost the customer an additional amount.
If you pay by credit card, you say it does cost them. At the counter?
At the counter, no.
No.
We pay that.
Okay, we pay it, okay, all right, no problem.
It's just like using.
So you encourage people, it's really encourage people to come in and pay in person.
That's how
It's cheaper,
the current
maybe,
structure.
if you live closer, I guess.
The current structure does that, yes.
And we'd actually encourage everyone to mail in a check or use their bank draft. Because that's process that we don't have to do in-house.
So the $2.75 transaction fee for online, where does that go?
Paymentus keeps it.
That's the process, that's the charge. That's Paymentus's payment for providing the service. That's credit card payment charge. That's not the credit card, that's the process.
That's the process.
So we can't process that? We can. We can process it here, but we still pay a discount. So to pay online, it needs to go through a third-party processor online. And those processors all charge very close to the same amount. But I mean, we can't process that ourselves? I understand if they come in here, that's the that's the credit card company. No, so we have to go through a merchant services provider to be able to accept those online, and that's what the payment is.
So the payments that are being processed by mail, that process should be caught up now. The payments made online are processed automatically within roughly 24 hours. So if someone does pay online, it reflects on their billing statement that they can see through the Citizen Access portal. It's a new thing since July 1st. Somebody can log in and see what their balance is. They can see what their previous consumption has been. So the change to process the transactions online and waive the fee would decrease the amount of per transaction fee, which I suppose, can I say that number out loud, even though that's a pending contract with Paymentus? It's basically $2 per, yeah, it doesn't matter this one. $2 per transaction for every $200. So the $60,000 projection is based on Paymentus charging us the absorbed rate of $2 per $200 transaction. So if somebody pays that $500, we would get a $6 fee for their $500 payment. So this is something that we had considered taking to the Finance Committee and processing as a recommendation to bring to the Commission to vote on. And that may be something that we need to do, because on the one hand, I would like to fight for the customer's ability to pay online and to increase that flexibility for them to do that rather than walk into the lobby, at the risk of cannibalizing, like I say, that business that's in the lobby, and then now they're just going to pay from home. Some people aren't going to pay that fee out of spite. I know that, human nature. You're not going to want to pay that fee, but why would you rather want to come stand in line for 30 minutes, potentially? Now, we say anecdotally that the line is never longer than a 10 to 15 minute wait. So that makes me feel a little better. But the inconvenience cost, do we want to offer that as a service to the customer, that we're going to waive the fee so that we can encourage you to pay online? But then that's going to increase the bottom line expense of processing the credit card payments online. That's a very uncomfortable decision to make.
Can I ask a naive question?
Yes, sir.
Because I really don't know. How come I can go to a lot of vendors who are online and I don't have to pay a fee?
It depends on who you're doing business with. Some like we could get a list. We could just even poll the room and find that some vendors do charge a fee and some do not. Some charge $1 processing fee to mail a statement to you and some do not. So I don't think there's no right or wrong here. I would feel a lot more comfortable about waiving that fee if I knew that more than 10% of the customers were using the service.
That fee exists whether the customer pays it directly when they make that payment or if the company absorbs it. If the company absorbs it, it's built into the rate that you're paying. If the customer is charged that in addition to their bill, it's a direct charge to that particular customer using that service. So for instance, if you go online and pay your Georgia Power or your Verizon bills, which are very large companies, you don't see a separate charge for paying online. But they are paying a payment provider to provide that service. If you go to Okefenokee Rural Electric, if you go to Sat Water, both of those have a convenience fee that's charged when you pay online. They're smaller companies and not absorbing that, passing that on to all of their other customers.
I mean, that's just, from my understanding, that's a cost of doing business, and some folks, just figure that they'll just build it into their cost. Question that I had was, you have to pay your water bill or you shut off water. That's just the facts of it. You want to make it easy so people pay promptly, and make it easier on them so it's not a hassle. Would it be more helpful if we had a drop box on like the island, maybe one exit 29? That's been done before, that to have local drop boxes and put that on the portal and say, hey.
Yes, sir. We have one on the island now, and we discussed recently about adding a box outside at the end of the sidewalk so that it's easier to drive through and make a payment. So the options are there. Over the course of time, we've had some minimal adoption of paying at other locations. Ace, Cash Express, Walmart. I'm missing one.
But all those would make
One of
us,
the pharmacies when the drugstore was open on Newcastle Street.
but wouldn't we have to pay a fee for those folks to be a drop box?
We did.
But if we had like a mailbox, a steel box, someone could drop a payment in, it's a fixed cost.
There's also a cost for that because we have our Loomis, our courier company, pick that cash up rather than having an employee pick up payments out of that, which
I guess the cheapest one would be the one right outside here. You could go outside.
you don't even have to go outside. You can open it from the
The credit card fee honestly turns into low-hanging fruit. The customer uses that as an example of how we're not willing to satisfy their wants, their needs, their desires. I would like to consider, and however this might have to happen, if we have to go to the finance committee or we suggest that now, but I'd like to consider that because it's all conjecture, it might be wise for us to consider a short-term trial of waiving that fee and publish that it's a short-term trial so that the customer has an understanding to help us get through this time where we can't handle the call volume, we can't handle the walk-in traffic. We'd like to encourage you to pay online, but then after that period of time, reassess the fee to see if Paymentus's 40% is far too aggressive or if that's conservative. I would seriously doubt, like I say, demographically that we're going to see this huge increase in customers that suddenly want to pay online. And I see that as a cost of doing business myself, but that's my personal opinion. I do know that if you said, okay, we're going to waive this fee, but we're going to have to let 2 people go, that's a tough decision. But if we can build that into the bottom line, if we can fund that in next year's budget, then we have the argument from the citizens, why should I have to pay an extra $2 a month so that somebody else can use a service that I don't use anyway? Subsidizing some people.
When you're developing your business case analysis
Yes, sir.
to present to the finance committee,
Yes, sir.
please include the potential for cost shift for delinquent accounts to the credit card company, because a person could pay their account to us and then not have the cash to pay his credit card. So the determination, that the person is making, this is conjecture,
Right.
is I'll pay my credit card, but I'll not pay my water bill. So include that as part of what you look at.
Certainly, yes, sir. So to our customers, I believe that we need to apologize. We've made some decisions that we didn't calculate the cost on. We didn't calculate the effect of making so many changes at once, and we were unprepared for those challenges. We didn't communicate that well up front. At this point, even to the employees that have to deal with the new billing system, we weren't as well prepared as we would like to have been. So that's something that we're working through now. Yes, sir.
Before a decision can be made on payments, we've been in discussions with BGJWSC Bank about them providing the gateway for online payments as well as the merchant services at the counter, and combining those entire pool of transactions into a percentage of charge, percentage of charge and frequency of payments.
Well, essentially,
We would put all of those online, any credit or debit card payments under one umbrella with BGJWSC Bank. That's what we're looking into right now.
okay,
So that's an option. It certainly looks like we're not going to make any change to the online payment process. We're not going to be waiving those fees, but we can waive the late fees until January. We can process only the delinquent account, 90 days past due cutoffs. There are some options that we can execute to reduce some of the increase in the call volume. We can staff up. If the budget allowed, I would love to have an additional lead customer service representative to assist on the floor with those account troubles, the transfers, and the new account setups. Because that way we could have dedicated staff at the desks in the lobby that are taking care of those things that are more time consuming. Then if you just have a payment, please walk right up to the counter and just get that done. I'd also like to add 2 permanent staff members to handle just calls for both the customer service billing issues and operations trouble calls. That would help resolve some of the issues that we've had with our after hours call service, where especially over Hurricane Irma, they were down for a number of days. And any day of the week, they're challenged with the same high call volume that we are, so they can't necessarily process all of the calls as quickly and as effectively as we'd like.
let me ask you a question here.
Yes, sir.
Do all the customer service people come to work at the same time?
No, sir, they're staggered now, with the exception of now being challenged to stay late. They come in at different times so that we're staggering their breaks. We will keep them as late as we need to keep them so that we can return all the calls the same day. Not getting a call back within an hour is acceptable. Not getting a call back within 6 hours is uncomfortable, but not getting a call back for days or never is unacceptable. And that's certainly not a good standard for us to set. So we staff up. We can't afford to do that. That may take us into next year. We would have to raise rates, and then we have complaints about higher rates.
Don't want to do that.
It's another option. We can bring in temporary staff to get us through the trouble period, which we have very little confidence that's going to be accomplished by January 1st, but that's where we want to be. Is we want to say by January 1st, are we going to be through the major hurdles? Then we have, as we've discussed before, the least qualified person to answer the customer's question becoming the first person that they talk to. That is hit or miss. Using the temporary staff to answer customer service calls has worked for us well, and it also has worked for us not so well. So you then have to give somebody a trial period to see if they would be effective.
What does the one who answers a call about a problem with their bill, what tools do they have to resolve that issue in that call?
Using their access to the billing system. So they see the customer's billing history. Which kind of brings up an issue. We've had some people volunteer. We've had people say, well, I'd love to just come in and at least give people the feeling, the feel good. Sorry, they're very busy. Let me get your name and number and we'll get back to you. I wouldn't want to have that volunteer have access to their account, but it may be possible to have people that are able to answer calls. But I can't depend on the kindness of strangers, though that has been offered by 2 people to me personally. I'll volunteer to come in and answer your calls for you. I don't know how well that would work long term, but the alternative, of course, is to do nothing. We can continue taking the black eye, and we can hope that that black eye doesn't become a permanent mark and it doesn't become a scar. Our customers are starting to see a huge dip in our customer service level, and now that they're calling to complain about that, we now have 2 more staff members capable of answering those calls. The call volume is increasing much faster than we can staff up. So this is, as I've mentioned in the past, things getting worse before they get better. Until we get through the hurdles of the customer service billing system change, our customer service level is going to remain low because we simply cannot return the calls
Okay.
with the number of people we have.
Well, let's stop for a second.
Yes, sir.
Part of our call volume issue is the fact that we weren't processing bills, therefore we weren't processing payments. And so we have a backlog there.
Yes, sir.
Is that backlog been driven down?
It has, yes, sir. So using 2 temps to come in and process those, the backlog boxes of checks that were coming in from the vendor, that has been caught up. When we transition from Atlanta to our site, that entire site's gonna be a short period of time, is it not, John? It's just a matter of more like weeks than months.
The amount of mail coming from the lockbox in Atlanta should be down to just oddball pieces here and there. We changed the billing address on the bills to this location about 10 days ago. So all of those bills will be coming directly here and processed that day. So that mail.
We give them a pre-addressed envelope.
They get a window envelope and the return address is in that window. From the remittance stuff.
So the customer, is what you're telling me, doesn't have to do anything to change where the mail goes.
No.
Unless they use a bank draft, which I don't know what the figures are on that, in which case,
You're not using bank draft.
not bank draft, the
Brother,
e-check, what do you call that, where it's Bank of America drops it in the mail for
They
them.
pay through their bank, they have to.
Those will be misrouted.
Again, those are paper checks coming to us.
Right. So there'll still be a delay there if they're using Atlanta.
Those checks don't go to it. They, I think, typically come to us anyway.
what you're saying is, when they make the payment, those where they're supposed to make them to, go to an address we control?
Somewhat, I believe they come to this address when they pay through their bank. Different banks do different things. Some banks send an actual paper check when you pay through your account. I believe that's always come here. Other banks process it and then send us an electronic file, which we then upload into the system. So we've probably got 8 or 10 different mechanisms that electronic files or checks come to us. And they all have their own quirks. The bottom line is anything that comes in the mail should be coming to this office now.
Dr. Gibson?
And then once the lockbox with BB&T is fully tested and run through all of the steps that we need to, then all of those checks will be mailed to the post office box in Orlando, which is the nearest BB&T lockbox processing center. And be processed there, as well as we're setting up a separate service called AR Box, which handles all of those other miscellaneous bank drafted checks and so on, all go into that, and BB&T will sort through all of that and compile it and send us a flat file on that as well, and upload it into our systems.
Jay,
Now,
one
all
thing,
of the checks come, all of the payments come here, either electronically or by paper, other than some stragglers that may still be out there.
Jay, one of the things you brought up was the delays in billing that caused confusion because there was an extra week of time while we were out for Irma.
Yes, sir.
right? Is that more or less the key that's, or the piece that's causing the current surge in calls? People
Yes,
confused about that? So we're talking about in the next week or two, we ought to be clear of that particular fire.
Yes, sir, once we send out the October billing statements that show, well, and nobody's gonna call in and complain that their billing period was too short and their balance is lower. So that, right, there'll be a 3-week period potentially where we'll have a shorter period of time for the next billing cycle. So yes, sir, that should slow down.
It seems to me that, I was trying to pick out what's important for me to deal with here, and all this hiring and new fees or whatever, it's kind of got me in a daze here. But anyhow, we had a spike in calls.
Yes, sir.
A
Huge.
spike in calls from my customers, which we're very concerned about. And we have a pretty good idea what we think the reason for the spike is. Okay, one of them, the director just touched on again. I think where he's going is probably with some time, we're gonna work through
Yes, sir.
some of these things.
And during that period of time, you're gonna see the
Okay.
overtime climb.
Okay, okay, good enough, but seems to me, for my part, this is all I'm gonna say, why don't we buy some time here, it doesn't cost anything, and see if the dust settles down. Let's see what happens in a month, come back and tell us, and see if we see a trend going down. I think we're trying to get too proactive, and because we can make some decisions, especially this soon, we may make some decisions that,
Yeah, we wouldn't make any permanent changes based on the current surges, but, you know, what I think Jay's, and correct me, Jay, you're just trying to look, what are the short-term things we can do to mitigate the immediate discomfort of our customers?
Right.
One of the other things you mentioned that I think we talked about before, just for convenience sake, relieve some of the standing in line, that kind of thing. Do we have enough customers that put a kiosk out there? Y'all talked about that, right? If we had a Visa kiosk or a credit card kiosk, would that help things?
Potentially, the problem with the original idea is that it would be a product of Paymentus. So every transaction processed at the kiosk we'd be stealing business off the line and then paying that customer $275 for the pleasure. So, well, actually, they would be paying the fee at that point. Would they walk off the line to pay $275 extra?
If delayed, you know, it depends on their mindset.
Right.
We don't necessarily have to buy a kiosk, we could use our own terminal and do that.
Same story though. If it's processed online, you'd still pay a fee. And what my point being that I would rather give the business to BB&T than Paymentus if it's done in the lobby. If that's a fair thing to say. And John's working on that. So that problem may be solved without having to waive the fees now because BB&T is working on a solution.
If
Fair enough.
we do go with BB&T, and if we do go with BB&T with that arrangement you were negotiating, will they allow our customers to come in and make a payment at a teller? A BB&T teller?
Oh, at a bank?
At a bank?
I don't really know, Commissioner. I know when United Community was processing our payments, first they had the lockbox and what's now the annex in the building, they were able to take payments at their branch offices because they were actually processing payments in-house. Whether BB&T can do that, I don't know.
Good question.
That's a good question.
I would tend to doubt it, but.
That'd give us a lot of relief up front.
Okay, put this as an agenda item for the finance committee to look at this again at the next commission meeting.
I believe that
See what we are.
certainly short of waiving the fees, that's not gonna happen today, but, so really my goal here in what I was aiming to communicate was that rather than approaching that like we were in August of reducing overtime as best we could, we're now at the other end of the argument. We need to increase overtime allowance because we're gonna have customer service reps, a meter service technician, and a billing clerk that are staying late to return phone calls that we can't accommodate during the business hours. So don't be surprised If I'm then saying, I didn't meet your goal of reducing overtime, I actually doubled it, for example.
We'll look at it, yeah. Go ahead.
Didn't we say something about, you stagger not for lunch hours?
Yes, sir.
You can't stagger for overtime for late evening hours?
No, sir, it's bodies. If I give you 100 phone calls to return, and you give those to 5 people, and they can handle 20 in X amount of time, you can't return those calls any quicker.
So you talking return calls, not calls,
Returning
incoming
calls.
calls, you're not talking about incoming calls?
Correct, yeah, because the incoming call volume is far greater than we can respond to. More people hang up than we answer.
Well, how many,
Well, that's not accurate. 7,600 were answered, 4,500 were dropped. So it's just the opposite.
how many people leave us a voicemail and ask us to call back?
That's between 35 and 100 per day. It's not consistent, but, and it's occasionally higher than that, and it comes
Well, I
right
don't
after
know
the
all the
bills go
calls
out.
to sit around and wait till the end of the day.
No, sir.
No,
We've discussed that. We will not allow sandbagging. So somebody's not gonna wander the halls during the business hour and then at the end of the day stay late so they can return calls. That's
Do
gonna
we
be
know
managed.
how many of these calls are from the same party, maybe a couple of times? Some folks get frustrated like I do with Comcast. I like Comcast, got good service, but anyhow, when I have a problem, call them. I think if I call them 4 or 5 times, I'm gonna get them, and I never get them.
And yes, sir, for example, if you had to call 5 times to get somebody, when you do get somebody on the line, it's gonna make the call last 5 times as long because you wanna give them a piece of your mind. So we face that.
Do we know?
It's a longer call.
Of the 44,000 something, or 33,000 something that dropped?
Yes, sir. It's just a bulk number as far as calls coming in and calls drop. And for instance, I can't give you a number on how many calls we return because I can't say that's them calling a customer, their mama, or calling in a pizza. So an outbound call doesn't reflect whether it's a return.
See, my only issue is that you're advocating to do more overtime based upon the call volume, the number of calls that you got,
Yes,
must return back. And so what you advocate is that you want to keep your people past the duty hours or the posted hours.
Correct.
For how long though? You're not saying, are you planning on keeping them an hour later or 2 hours later, or what are you trying to say, or as needed?
As needed. They would stay until, like Luke, for instance, said there's a cap. I can only call you until 9, legally. 9? I think it's 9. So it would only be up till 9, but I honestly can't tell you how that would be, how often, how long, I can't predict the call volume.
So you advocate calling people back up to 9 o'clock at night?
Yes, sir, I am. You yourself asked me yesterday, what are we doing to increase our customer service level? You can only do that by reaching out and touching the customer.
We have a
So we have
major
to do that.
problem with people, they leave a voicemail and they're never returned.
That's true.
And that's a big irritant to the customer base. And so the idea is that, look at it and send the commissioners a recommendation in a week. Try that for about a week. Okay? Let's get some experience factor of how many calls, because it may become a choice of, if we're up to 9 o'clock returning calls,
Yes, sir.
that's not really very acceptable either.
People have families they want to get home to.
Yes.
So we may have to.
It may be that we have to hire other temporary employees or permanent employees during this period to answer the calls. The thing is, we need to answer all calls.
Correct.
Even if they're voicemail. Okay, commissioners? Beat this one.
Yeah, I just think we need a game plan that makes sense. I mean, I agree with returning all calls as a county commissioner. I work very hard at returning people's calls. Their problem is a big problem to them. And they call you, they want to talk to you. And, very important that you return calls and make that contact with the people. And that works here, joint water sewer also. So I just think we need a very focused approach, for the board to consider what we do going forward.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'll go one farther, it just doesn't have to be customer service people returning calls.
Access to the, I'll be calling back.
Well,
We have at least
other staff
9
members,
people, right? So we're devising a means by which we can knock this down proactively, but also balance the load. So we don't need, well, then again, if I have somebody that can return 5 calls in the same time it takes me to
Well,
return
can
1.
we not say, if they leave a voicemail, I have a problem with my bill, and you like copious knows what the problem is,
Yes, sir.
you return the call, and then you say, someone will call you tomorrow with an answer to this. I can't do it right now.
Tomorrow has its own challenges.
I understand that.
And the weekend is another debate. We get calls in on the weekend, we get calls in after hours. So it's a steady stream. It doesn't just happen between 8 and 5 on Monday through Friday.
Jay, did you say all your people were, it's hard for me to talk back to that, but anyway, everybody's from 8 to 5?
The hours are from 8 to 5. We have staff that come in 7 to 4, 2 that do that. And then we have 3 that, well, they're staggered at that point to like 8:30 or 9 to 5:30
The
or
only
6.
thing basically you're staggering is your lunch hour. Why can't you, when the office closes up front, have somebody volunteer that from 6 to 8, they stay, and you come in at 10, work till 6. You volunteer.
Then we have a problem with the walk-in traffic.
Well, meaning you close at 5 o'clock.
No, meaning in the daytime hours, if I, let's say if I had a 12 to, or not,
No, it's about 10 to 6. Is that 8 hours?
potentially, so we could potentially do that.
I mean, you could rotate. I mean, you got some that volunteer, you got some rotate. That traffic outside's gonna stop. And then you got 2 good hours. So.
And it may be based on the week. The 1st and the 15th has the highest demand. So if we had a weird shift pattern during those 2 weeks, then that may be realistic. So we stagger them.
Well,
Can I ask Jay, in follow up to Commissioner Adams' question, I see where you're going. Is there a way to look at our transaction data on the customers and see when the traffic's really occurring during the day? Where is the clustered needs? Can we, as Commissioner Adams says, pick a point or later start for a couple of them that would, meet those needs, and maybe look also at the phone traffic and see where they're bouncing around in our 8-hour day or 9-hour day.
On the phone, it's a lot easier. The phone report actually shows you based on an hour block what your demand was. If you needed 6 people or you needed 7 people for this hour of time. The walk-in traffic is so sporadic. I'll look and see if there's something that's kept as far as the enterprise transactions.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe enterprise.
That may be a report that could be built to show when we have the highest traffic.
We've got the enterprise folks coming, is it next week, John?
Week after next.
Let's go ahead and reach out to them and see if we can help Jay with that data from the existing software and see if they can create a filter to help let us analyze that.
We can look in the payment backlogs and see if that has captured, and then if it is, we can probably extract it.
Okay.
When you get the Dropbox out there, you're gonna have less traffic.
That's right.
It doesn't check the time though.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
You want to announce?
You got the floor.
You can go ahead and announce it if you like. Chairman and Commissioners, I'm here to give you an update on the flow at each wastewater treatment plant. I think you have a handout in your package. This is an ongoing task, and we are glad to present that the kind of flow that these plants uses. Academy Creek, we can start with Dunbar. Dunbar, as you can see, in September this year, during the month, Hurricane Irma produced 10.4 inches of rain. Average flow
Average flow was 3.9, max flow was 5.0 at that time. That's not peak flow, but it was, during that time, through the month, it was average flow. I think we peaked out in the lane.
Like 72.
72, peaked out at 72 during the hurricane, which was much better than a year ago. We had that hurricane that caused the perfect storm. Any questions on the Dunbar?
Well, let's talk about the BOD. Okay, what does BOD 5.0 mean?
Well, we have a 5.0 monthly average and a 7.5.
That's on the effluent going out.
Going out,
Right.
going out. It's effluent going out.
Yeah.
This is our permit.
That, okay, is 5 good or bad?
Five is right there on the limit for that plant right there. Milligrams per liter.
So, okay, I'm trying to understand this. I mean, I understand that we had a lot of rain, but we also had a lot of high BOD.
Right.
And I thought that because of the rain, we had less BOD,
It should be more diluted normally with a lot of.
more dilution.
Well,
But you got,
what's up is in the system is gonna come through. Okay. So, at some time or another, you have this BOD that falls out in the collection system. And when the heavy rains come through, it's gonna bring that to us. You may see an increase in BOD when heavy rain falls.
Just for record, just remind us what BOD stands for.
Biochemical oxygen demand. It's a 5-day process.
So, you saying this, some stormwater's getting into the system or something, is that?
Without a doubt, we got effluent infiltration, yes.
That's what's causing a lot of that too?
Well, a lot of stormwater don't bring in a lot of BOD. BOD is basically biological, it's already in the system, waste.
And you can't really tell vegetation or stuff like that, that's from stormwater, from normal sewer.
But, you don't get this when it rains, when it doesn't have a big rainstorm.
Rain don't increase BOD, so to speak, unless it's washing it out of the transmission.
Right.
I mean, naturally, we want the sewer system, collection system, to flow at no less than 2 feet per second. That keeps the biological in suspension.
Right.
But that don't always happen. You got lines that pump, slows down, and when a big heavy rain comes through, it's gonna clean the line, it's gonna bring that BOD to us.
Okay, so accumulated solids poo is just gonna be washed on through and you're gonna see that at the far end.
We'll get it.
What's the monthly average that EPA looks for?
Monthly average is 5, 7.5 to 5.
It's 5?
So we right on that. That's for that particular plan. And you want to ask it?
But I guess my question would be is, like in October, we had over 9 inches of rain, yet you had a BOD of 7. And then in September, we had 4 inches of rain and a higher BOD.
Wait a minute, where are you looking at? Which one are you looking at?
That's got the group.
Oh, look.
Let's go to Dunbar. You got Dunbar? Are we looking at Dunbar?
Okay.
Okay, October 16, is that what you're speaking of?
Yeah, but my question was more on academy.
Okay, okay, we can go there. No problem. Okay. We had 4.7 inches of rain. No, actually, that was September 16, 4.7 inches of rain.
Okay.
October 16, we had 9.8 inches. September this year, you don't have that on your sheet, but we had 11.2 inches of rain for the whole month. 9.4 of those inches within 2 days on the 10th and 11th. again, comparing the data and the flow coming through the transmission lines, I'm at the mercy of the collection system. We got a pump that's down or a station that's down, and we need to get it up. It's gonna pump it in faster than the flow as it comes normally. So you can throw a slug at that time. More concentrated BOD.
We don't have the September numbers for Canada.
No, I got, we weren't able to get them printed up on Canada Creek, but we had a TSS of 14, we had a BOD coming in of 91, and an effluent BOD of 9 on the average for the month.
On how many gallons?
Flow for the month, I don't know, maybe I got it right here. Got it right here. The average flow for the month was 10.6. And during those 2 days, we maxed out at 1668, but we actually peaked at about 27.
Now, one comment too, that influenced our numbers, I think, I'm speculating, Andrew, with the washout we were getting, and Alan, Mark, we had some washout because of the 20-something million gallons we had during the storm, right?
Yes, yes.
Which in my mind means we've got a lot of organic carry through or BOD that's actually getting taken out to the compositor during that period of time. I'm wondering if those days that we had those heavy flows and maybe had some washout, could that have affected the BOD in this to this magnitude?
Yes, it can. What happened during that time, the hurricane, getting in preparation of the hurricane, now myself decided to reduce the solids into the system, that's in the system. So we wasted as much of the solids we can without doing the treatment before the hurricane. Sure enough, when the hurricane came, it overloaded the system. We had basically flow through. Flow through caused some hydraulics, a lot of hydraulics, which with very minimum solids in the system was the very minimum solids going out of the system. So we was looking at influent BODs at 88, I mean not BODs, let's talk solids. We're looking at influent solids at 88 with maybe a 13, 15 going out. So, I mean, it throws the ratio off. We didn't meet the 85 removal limit, but it was very little solids in the system overall. I had a sleep study last night. I feel good not to have 50 wires attached to me right now.
So what percent of the capacity do you think we used in September?
What percent of the capacity for Canyon Creek?
Yeah.
September. At 1 day. I mean, at 1 month.
Yeah.
I don't have that information, so.
Okay, is that the permit capacity or, that's not plant capacity, that's the permit?
Well,
Correct? Or is that a capacity?
that's the permit capacity, 13.5 on a monthly, 16.9 on a week.
Okay. But what is the true capacity of the plant?
I've seen 23, I've seen 27.
So, I mean, we have a lot of capacity.
With everything running, with everything online, it basically set up for 8%, permit is set up for 8% of capacity. So based on that number there, you add another 20%, that's what we have.
But in the last year, only one time were we above 70% of our capacity. And of course, that was during Matthew.
But Dunbar was 90%.
Yeah, that's a problem. That was last month. Well, it was also 82% in July.
Yeah.
And you can see it
Yeah, where's
On that topic of, I know this is kind of off of what you've been doing, but driving the Sea Island, or the causeway to the island, DOT is installing a huge pipe, probably a 72-inch pipe. I'm assuming it's for storm drainage. We've talked about in the past again and again, that Dunbar Creek is an older plant, needs either major rehabs or replacement. Is there any plans or any thoughts in engineering to, someone's told me it was impossible. We've gone to the moon, so it's not impossible. The receiving manhole is already at the intersection at the end of the causeway, pushing a pipe from St. Simon's Island to Academy, so that the flow, Dunbar Creek is gone, and it's now a big holding tank and pump station to send everything to Academy Creek. Has any thoughts been done on that? I know it would not be cheap, but I'm thinking 10-year horizon, even just starting the planning and see if there's grants out there. I'm fairly confident it'd be cheaper than replacing Dunbar Creek. And permitting, you probably even get some grants to do the work. So I don't know.
No, we have not looked at it, but I will say this, as far as pumping it the whatever miles it is to get it from Dunbar over to the other side, the infrastructure we've got right there, I'm not sure that we have anything that's sized to take the 2.5 to 4 million gallons a day, and that number is going up unless we get out there and really invest some money to stop some I&I. So it's going to be a lot more than right now. The estimates we've got for rehabbing the plant as is and getting it to a point where it operates more like a conventional aeration plant like Academy Creek is 5.3 from our consultant that's looking at the assessment. 5.3 million versus what it would take to put it in a pump station, run the flows, the miles and miles it would take to get it back over here, and then upsize the receiving assets to do that. Man, you're talking about, I'm thinking some serious 8-figure project to get it done. It would not be an economic deal.
Okay, well, this is the engineer in me driving and seeing a big 72-inch pipe on the causeway. I just had thoughts of doing that, so, all right, fine.
During my tenure here, I've heard that comment many times before. Before Mr. Johnny Casey, he always thought that was the right thing to do, but you have to jump through a lot of legislation to get that done.
A lot of money.
I don't think we'll see it in my time.
Now, we're gonna talk about plants, and what we're doing with plants on the 19th, right?
Yeah.
So I like this report so we can talk about, the commissioners can have a better grasp of what's flowing through our plants.
Yeah, right now we move to the next subject since I'm still next. I think we asked about the farming issue at Academy Creek. You have an insert into your minutes there that kind of, if you look over that, kind of give you an idea through Constantine of what we're dealing with.
Let's go through the background real quick. Well, what caused us to look at it again?
Well, basically, Academy Creek was set up as a UNOX plant to treat waste at a quicker rate. The drawback to that is that it caused foam. You know, it was set up to treat DOT at a high level. Currently we process about half that, but the drawback is the higher foam. When I got there, foam was everywhere. I mean, we constantly had foam. Ivan and myself has come in and put provisions with the help of Constantine Group, other contractors, to try to combat the situation. The things that he mentioned in here, we have done several times more so. The good part about what happened with the hurricane is that it gave them a chance to kind of start over. They did clean the lines, flushed everything out. Recommended that we get this limit down. We have thought of that. When we thought of that before, we was told that. We are doing that. But again, I'm at the mercy of the collection system. You're talking grease deposits. You're talking about industry that produce grease. You're talking about tank haulers. And it's an ongoing combating the situation day by day. Like I say, when you said, well, let's worry about that tomorrow bring on another challenge. So, yes.
I guess kind of where I was going with what I want you to cover is, we have citizens that monitor the effluent flow from the plant into Academy Creek, and they call attention to EPD on when we have foaming issues. So it is something that we have to pay attention
And
to.
I can say that, I can say, again, I quote Jay, he got thousands of customers, and I got one that got a big voice. That's really wanted to be known that, you know, he has a basic concern. I mean, we both concerned about the environment. And moving on to my next subject as far as the letters, that right now I'm in the process of writing two comments to the letters that was written to EPD discussing some of the issues that they thought was going on in Academy Creek. So we put together a letter for the 18th. We sent photos on the 18th showing some outfall degradation where the silt itself, because of the high flow, was being stirred up in the outfall. At no time that we discharge gray water to the receiving stream. I mean, we are there to protect the downstream users. That's what we do. The second comment that he had, I don't know how many feet that he fly at, but he takes pictures, and most of the time the water is very transparent, and what you're looking at is the lagoons that's underneath the water, and he calls it, again, gray water.
Did you explain what the foaming is the result of?
It was a result of the cardio. It's grease deposits that build up, old biological treatment that we recirculate back to the head of the plant that we found out that when we supinate. We cause it ourselves problem when we do that. It's just a buildup of old sludge that we're trying to reduce with sludge age, with grease deposits along with that.
Is it actual? It's not actual grease.
You can almost put it between your fingers and rub it in.
Yeah, but it's my understanding is the dead.
The cardio that Mr. Riles is talking about, the nature of the process, because it's a pure oxygen process, and as I was as it was explained, the fact that we don't take the grease and fats and oils out up front in a primary clarifier, which again, this is one of the issues with the technology. It causes the nocardia to become your dominant species of biology in there, and if you let that stuff accumulate, you don't waste quick enough, they stay there. And I think, Mark, you guys have even put chlorine into some of the processes to try to help, because a little dose of chlorine affects these critters more than the others. They're more surface areas, so they absorb more food, they create problems. Because of the shape of their bodies, they do create a foam, and so you chlorinate them, you keep the age of the foam down, of the sludge down, and what else do we do? Seems like you guys had some other tricks up your sleeve. Waste.
Spray the foam. Yeah. Chlorination. I mean, initially when the plant was put there, it had return lines that had chlorination line in it. And then we did an upgrade back in
2004.
2004, they stripped those lines out. So Alan and myself decided to go ahead on and put a drip process in. And started doing it that way, mixing return again with chlorination. But Constantine wrote saying being there's more of a surface bacteria, let's try spraying it in the form of a surface in order to kill it that way.
But it really all comes back to one thing, I think. Mark and them are doing, I think, probably the best they can with the technology they've got. If we had a more modern plant, which is one of the things we're trying to get a handle on, they'd be able to do their job a lot more effectively.
We are in the process of writing those letters, answering Mr. Holland. I call him E.L. Hud, because when he speaks, everybody listens. But we will get a comment back to EPD on his behalf. And hopefully I can get me, I was able to invite him at one time, and he came here at this building, and we had a good talk. And we had pretty much a good relationship for a little while. And then I guess we came up on the Richter scale again.
Mr. Rouse, got a question now. This process evaluation by Constantine, is this going to satisfy the requirements, satisfy this individual who says we are in violation? Is this going to satisfy that?
Not necessarily.
Evaluation, well,
not necessarily that report, because again, we are permitted to discharge underneath a certain limit.
but he's just crying loud. In other words, he's making reports.
Well, he's making comments to the point where he feels like what he sees is not treated wastewater. I mean,
I responded to him when I was working for Glynn County. There's not a lot that will satisfy him.
Yeah, I understand it's not satisfying him, but it is satisfying our requirement to be in compliance.
Yes, sir. I mean, it's not many times, I wouldn't say not one time, not many times we've been out of permit. We strictly have been within permit for years.
So what is this evaluation doing for us?
This evaluation is helping us as operators, you know.
It just solidifying the fact that other folks see the same thing that we see?
Right.
No, the assessment's looking at the technologies to see what we can do. Now, the plant is aged in and of itself. Forget the technology. Go out there and look at the pots and pans and the equipment. It's aged, it's worn, some of it's worn out. These guys are fighting some major issues of maintenance. Pretty routinely, Mark and Alvin will tell me, oh, we need another $25,000 to replace this splitter cake. Oh, we need another $25,000 to work on this gearbox. Oh, we need another $25,000 to replace this pump. The plant's worn out.
All
It's
in
been exposed to.
$125,000
Did I say 125? I meant 25,000.
Most of the budget for those. Try to stay
But
with
having
the budget.
said all that, the plant is old in and of itself and needs something to do. So when we initiated the assessment, we wanted to see what we needed to do as a whole to get the plant back up to good standards. In looking at it, our consultant looked at it and said, you know, if you'll make these changes, in addition to bringing giving you a new plant, relatively speaking, we will also be able to reduce your operating costs through reduction in energy usage, reduction in disposal, reduction in pure oxygen use, and give you the tools you need to treat some of those wastes we can't treat right now, and allow you to be able to treat some of the things you're going to be permitted for down the road, and that being phosphates. Said all that could happen, and it would save you about $1.2 million to $1.5 million a year in operating costs over what we're spending now.
Right.
So
But this report doesn't say that. Yes or no? Does this evaluation here that what he gave us, that doesn't?
Oh, I don't
That's in
know.
addition to what?
That's just Constantine, why we were
I'm
still.
sorry.
Okay, no, I understand that. I understand what you're saying too, exactly.
It's a good deal, though.
But it's an old plant. When was the plant built?
It's 60.
I
remember
That was
as
the
a
first
teenager,
phase.
I remember as a teenager when they were digging up the road, Elm Street and all, laying the pipes, went down there and built the plant back in the 60s.
You installed the first thing there.
I had some hair and started.
You installed the first thing there, you installed the last thing there.
I didn't install it. I sure jumped down in the ditch and played down there a lot when I was a kid.
You
Well, like I say, it's an old plan, and to upgrade it, it's time for upgrading with that. And also, hopefully, the footprint of that will allow us to do other things there. Or for savings, but, you know, I guess we'll look at.
We're gonna definitely, with the changes, there's gonna be some, like I said, $1.2 million to $1.5 million in various operating savings anticipated right now. Footprint will pretty much cover the little bit of property we've got there. We're gonna have to move some things around a little bit, salvage all that we can, and make a few changes. But I think it's gonna be a great outcome in the end.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, commissioners? Thank you. BGJWSC.
As long as we don't paint over those murals. I like those ones.
You know, those little whales and stuff and all those tanks around there and little fishes, like $40,000 for paint. Paint that.
That was before us.
Yeah.
But it wasn't
City paid for it, I think.
No, city for that. It was jump water at the same time when they came in, jump water at that. I was there, I was the one who was supposed to put it in.
The commissioners are having a discussion. I paid the tanks.
We need to find that out, John. Who paid for tanks to be painted down here at?
Yeah, you were on board that time.
That was about, it had to be around 2007.
No, that was the county water.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So that was in 2009 then.
It was 2000, I believe around
9 or 10. I was on the board at that time, I remember that.
Find out how much it cost us, please.
I thought it was somewhere around
$17,000. I bet it was less than 40.
No, it was, my best recollection right now is about, it's in the neighborhood of 40 to 50,000.
Oh, jeez, I lose. Good thing I didn't put the money that morning.
We ran out of money.
I lost out.
I'm sorry, I mean, and they only painted halfway around, you know, they didn't go all the way around.
Oh.
We ran out of money.
That laughing gas is good.
You laughing at me.
You're,
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioners, good afternoon. First topic I've got to discuss is joint water sewer commission construction standards update. So we talked a lot about getting those standards updated. You can see this is the cover sheet for our current standards, February 2012. A little due for an update revision, and that is underway. It's been tossed around a lot, and we're trying to tackle this. I'll show you where you can go to find these, by the way. But what we were doing is on Fridays after the development review team meetings, we had all the different departments together. One of the things we wanted to do was give everybody equal opportunity and voice to offer their input on how the standards need to be updated and revised. What was happening, it was dragging on and on and on. By the time we get done reviewing all private construction projects, everybody was a little review giddy, and it just wasn't happening, getting done. So what I've done is I've tasked for my staff, Timothy Ransom, who's our plan review specialist. He was a 30-year veteran of the Glynn County Water and Sewer Department, as well as Joint Water Now. He was involved in the very beginnings of what he lovingly refers to as the GRAIL, which is the county's water and sewer specs. Combined with the cities, we have the now current joint water and sewer specs. So with his knowledge and whatnot, I've tasked him as a goal for his annual evaluation of this next 12 months is to bring this one home. So first step for Tim's process there, lay out a little outline of what we're doing. That's difficult to see here, unless I can zoom in somehow.
there's a zoom button to the left.
Right. Zoom, thank goodness. All right. Revision plans, the first thing we're doing is essentially going to each department, each division, and giving them a fair week's worth of interviewing. Provide us with your wish list of wants and revisions, and we will take those and bring those back and compile those together. So water distribution, pre-treatment, system pumping, which is perhaps the most intensive review. We have that broken down into two different types of collection system and pump stations. Wastewater treatment, obviously, important to get their input and feedback, water production. Procurement, which plays a big part in how our specs are put together, because the end goal we want to have is a form of a technical spec that we can plop on the backside of RFPs, et cetera, and make that process more standardized. Planning construction, that's us, engineering, and then obviously with executive deputy director, have a final input from them and the knowledge they bring from their past experiences. Once we have that all together, compilation, that's going to be performed by planning and construction. It will have also an opportunity there to develop any new or necessary revised details, CAD drawings. Is there anything new that we need to revise or create to incorporate in our specs? Final draft, let's see, maybe this thing. Final draft. In conversation with Constantine this past week, we're going to get some good input from them. They recommended St. Johns County down in Florida, which is a comparable size utility to us, to compare our specs with, and perhaps base ours upon, and also JEA. Much larger, but they're pretty progressive in their spec program. Either ourselves, PNC, or outside consultant, we then take and format those technical specs as we talked about in bidding format. We'll take those, the compilation of that, present it back to the different divisions for a final review and comment. And next step will be presentation to what we call or refer to as community stakeholders. Engineers, consultants, contractors, developers, whoever has been, or who has a vested interest in these. And just pointing out, Mr. Ford, you asked about this in last facilities, very good question. The current standards actually, if you'll note here, Brunswick-Glynn County Joint Water Sewer Commission, last time it was revised, 2012, expresses its sincere appreciation and gratitude to those local developers, utility contractors, consulting engineers, and EPD officials. Reached out to the state as well, who contributed to the development of these standards. So it's a tradition, it's a show of good faith to the community, and those that will be using these standards to reach out to them for input as well. So common practice, we'll just continue that unless the commission determines or executive director determines otherwise. So.
Now, are we getting the county involved with these?
Go ahead.
As far as we would like these, if possible, incorporated into all new developments, whether or not they kind of connect to joint water or not.
That's a very good, we've discussed that very fact that private assets don't necessarily have to meet our standards, and if that day comes where we're asked to take them over or tie them back into us just because whoever we put them in there to begin with is gone, there's nobody making, that's a real good point.
It's frequently an issue where somebody comes back to us and says, hey, we want you to take this over. We then have to evaluate that system, does it meet current joint water standards? Many times it does not.
Well, shouldn't the standard be uniform for the state or federal or whatever, so the same standards that we have, that they should comply?
The state has minimum standards, and then it's up to local community to develop any standards that are more stringent than that and go above and beyond that. There are minimum state standards which are based on EPA standards.
So our standards are higher, more stringent?
More detailed.
State standards are pretty bare bones.
Right.
Just, I mean, they're really not that detailed. A lot more specificity is needed for utility.
Well, isn't it possible to get Glynn County and City of Brunswick, whoever it is, to actually have those standards uniform for anyone who would use our system or come in the county to build? Could we do that?
I don't know the answer to that question. The only other thing that I would think that there's some legal issues. Can you force a private landowner.
But if they are going to be tied to our system in the meantime, you know.
So if it's tied to the system, but
As you look at it, eventually, you know, let's say they get ready, they decide to do their own thing, and then 10 years later, say, well, we want you to take it over. So now they gotta redo their whole system tied to us?
pretty much.
It would be best to have them do it, you know, in the beginning. At the end of the
I don't
day.
know, legally, you know, that's a good question for our attorney. Can we force a private landowner who's not
To have minimum
to go
our
anything
basic
beyond
standards.
the Georgia state minimum standards?
Glynn County standards.
We use those BGJWSC.
Yeah, I'm saying county and city could, or whatever.
They have to get a building permit,
Yeah, so
correct?
they can make it part of their process.
That those standards be.
Well, first off, your construction standards you're talking about, we don't have Georgia construction standards as such. You know, you have codes that govern plumbing work, you have codes that govern electrical work, you have codes that govern where you have to know about utility work. But as far as the level that you expect that your system to be constructed to, that's up to the local municipalities, the county, if we're operating it. Or, you know, say in roads, okay? The county has standards for roads, okay? Your water sewer, or if the county or the city still had our water sewer, and if we still had, we'd have our own construction standards. I think in the case of the county, when it comes to water and sewer, I'll have to check, but the Department of Community Development, you know, we okay anything that new development that's got to have some water and sewer work. I think we have something in there on the building permit that says it's got to comply with the water and sewer.
If it ties, as the mayor said, if it ties to us, we do have influence. But if it doesn't, as the mayor said, right now, there's nothing requiring those people doing developments that don't tie back to us to meet our standards. It'd be good if they did.
I would, but that's what you're concerned about.
Yeah.
I didn't know we didn't have that, but I think we should have that.
Am I correct? Todd,
Yes.
we don't review
Right,
private.
Right, so what you're referring to is like a private water system or a private sewer system. And there are those out there that have on-site treatment, things like that, or private well, community well that serves
Okay,
multiple lots, that type of
the reserve on St. Simon's Island is a private system.
thing.
Does it comply, other than being that it was not turned over to us because they didn't meet the criteria for setbacks from the buildings, correct?
I don't know all the details on that particular one, but I believe there were some easement issues.
There are easement issues and things like that.
Yeah.
But is the reserve built, other than those problems, to meet our requirements?
I don't know the answer. Don't know the
Probably
answer.
not.
And that's.
I don't know,
That's nothing we're
if
talking
someone
about,
had a
right?
piece of property and they want to put a road network for a private subdivision for 4 families that are all related, would they have to build the roads all to county standards if it's a private? I don't know if that's the case.
I would think so.
Yeah, we do.
If it is, if they're not dedicated to those roads.
One property owner, and you put a road across your, 200 acres, would that be different than if you had multiple property owners tied to it?
You know, I mean, to my knowledge, we have never approved anything that didn't meet the county.
I know when I was working
You put a
with
trail in,
a
it's
lot of
allowed, you put a
roads that
road.
were substandard.
But,
Lot of-
well, here's, I mean, it was a kind of a semi-private, not, but it was what I speak of is semi-private development opportunity. And we happen to have a threshold, if you, I'm not even sure what it is today, but say there's more than 40 lots being subdivided for future development, or parcel land, development.
Yeah, that may be it.
You know, you don't have to pay the roads, which I think is wrong, and I've been pushing to get it where, you know, I don't care how small, you know, and there should be a paved road in there, because what happens, and this is getting off, so what happens is, somebody will go out and buy a lot in a place, especially here, where it's kind of off the beaten path, because they don't want to be around everybody else, it's got a road that's not paved. But as soon as they're on that road for a little while, it's either too dusty or it's too wet. It's never just right. It's either too dusty or too wet. You know what? They want the county to come do something about that road because they pay property taxes now. All of a sudden, they forgot that they moved out there for the very reason it was a dirt road.
Well,
And so, you know, the best way to stop that, we'll pave everything.
well, I don't know, I just, you know, Woodrow Sapp has loads of private systems on, in Glynn County. Do you go back and say, Mr. Sapp, all your stuff needs to meet
It's a
our...
grandfather then, you just can't just do that.
And do we stop, if it's in the future, somebody develops something that we don't serve, and they wanna have Woodrow Sapp come in there, and it's gonna be a private system? I don't know.
He needs to.
Okay, I understand, at that level is where I'd like to get to. But the reserve, where does it feed to?
Feeds to our system.
Don't we give those people a bill? Yeah, don't we give them a bill? They get a bill, right? Uh-huh. And then, didn't we have an occasion in which the alarm was going off on a lift station? And nobody knew whose lift station it was?
I believe it has problems with their system,
So who worked on it?
That's the kind of stuff that's basically what Commissioner Browning's talking about.
So like this new RV park that we're talking about that's going down at exit 29, they're gonna own their system. But as of this second, they're gonna build to our standards.
They will, yes. That project would go, as all projects right now currently do, Glynn County or the city. We are a plan reviewer. We sit at the table with plan reviews, and they have to comply with our standards. Because they can make it.
So what would it take for us to get with the county and say, can you please adopt this for all buildings?
We just need to, Jimmy just talked to
Alan Allen, and then get a resolution set up, and then talk to Jim, and get a resolution set up, and then adopt.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be a big deal. Couple of resolutions.
Talk to Alan Allen, get Alan and talk to Pam.
So it sounds to me like you're volunteering.
Yeah, I'm volunteering. I'm volunteering.
See what it'll take to do, and then see what it'll take for city commissioner if you got it. Ain't that right? That's what it takes. That's it.
All right, so I'll wrap this one up here, this topic here. Based on October next year, we're gonna have a final draft to facilities and hopefully to the full commission for adoption. So it's a 12-month project to get it done. It's plenty of time to get it done. It coincides with Mr. Ransom's annual goal for his evaluation next year, so he's motivated to do it. So, excellent. Any other questions?
Yeah, well, do you see a need to let, invite some of your utility contractors maybe look at this?
Absolutely, yes, that's why we have a presentation to community stakeholders is one of our milestones here for review, which would be engineers, developers, I'm sorry, I didn't specify contractors, but.
Well, I didn't put glasses on.
Yes, but absolutely, and like I was saying, that's even following with tradition of our current standard, which joint water sewer. Last time this was revised, 2012. Sincere appreciation, gratitude to those local developers, utility contractors, public engineers, and EP officials who contributed to developing these standards. So it's following along the tradition getting the feedback and input from our local stakeholders, customers. So, all right. Any other questions? Moving along to next topic is R&R, capital projects update. This was presented to the facilities committee last week, and I will move through this fairly quickly. If there's any questions, I'm happy to stop and answer. There is also an attachment of, as we usually include, a map, location map. That's 11 by 17. You can follow along with that, the locations. If it's a green dot, that means it's currently in construction or under construction. If it's a red dot, it's in the design phase. There's also two other maps that I'll talk about when I get to those projects. One for the 4048 project. Got a couple pictures I'll share on that. Pictures are sometimes helpful to understand what's going on. And then also the overall SPLOS North Mainland project is the last map that we'll talk about. All right, so project 232 is State Route 99 Waterline Extension, Seaboard Construction Company. And that project is gaining some traction, once again, and some momentum. That's 341 up towards Sterling, facing Dollar General, facing north, on the eastern side, or eastern shoulder of 341. And this is an example of how close you can see we are to the 341 right-of-way, right along the shoulder here. It's very narrow. There's a power pole there, which typically indicates the edge of the DOT right-of-way. All on this side, on the outward side of the right-of-way, is a gas main, fiber, different things like that. This is the only place we can sneak it in. DOT was conducive to us putting that here, this close to edge of pavement, no closer, but this close to edge of pavement, because they don't anticipate any widening of 341, so, or any further widening. This shows right here an example of, this was to be open cut, but due to a storm conflict that was encountered near Grants Ferry, it was switched to directional drilling. So, a little bit less intrusive means of installing, a little more costly. We're going to see a change order here developed. The engineering already has it developed. We'll present that to the next facilities committee. It's about a $19,000 upgrade to switch out from open cut to just directional drilling. But this is a portion of the section we're going to do anyway. Some more pictures. So go along here and talk. But it is gaining momentum now. This is the phase 1 of this project along 341. Phase 2 is the section on State Route 99. That's another hurdle we're going to come up to. We're working on. But that's another one we've encountered a lot of existing utilities in the right of way. Yes, sir.
How far do you do that direction?
That was.
Because, I mean, it looks like a cave and so close to something. I'm surprised it didn't stop.
The last one.
Yeah.
Total length of this bore, I want to say it was like 150 feet or 160 feet.
I was just out there today looking at it, and it was a pretty lengthy directional bore for that size pipe. And they have to go under 341 on the Grants Ferry Road and under Highway 99.
Correct.
And so that's
correct. So we're currently under right there at Prater. So we punched under. We're right there at Sterling Baptist Church. We're working with them to obtain an easement from them to their parking lot. And once we get through their parking lot, we're home free. There's already existing easement. The county is allowing us to put our utility in. And we're going to connect right there just north of McKenzie. That's going to connect that loop under to Prater, where we've got easements existing behind Dollar General. We already have a bore underneath 99, so we're already on the north side of 99. We're filling in the gap. There's a big wetland bore there on 99 on the north side. You see that pipe sitting out there? We're going to fill that gap and connect that point between the Georgia Power easement 99 and there. Once we have that, we'll be completely looped from Spur 25, Green Swamp Road, down the easement, and then back to McKenzie. We'll finally have that loop connected. So, and that's phase 1, 2A, and 3. Phase 2 is a section on 99, and that's the difficult one. So likely that's going to revert from open cut to some more directional drilling. Good news on that though, Seaboard, our contractor, is very conducive to giving us an easement across their property. So we got DOT property there for several hundreds of feet. And then actually next door, just down the way, Georgia Pacific has a project going on. Their large driver actually behind this project gets the water line down 99. And they're receptive to also giving us an easement. So far, nothing's in writing yet. But they want nothing more than to get fire protection, get production water.
For an open cut?
For open cut, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Correct. Correct. So we're pushing hard to get those deals sealed and get going on. But it's at least we have some more momentum, and we'll have a loop connected soon. We hope. Urbana Sewer Replacement Project 319. The work is essentially all done except there are a few items left. I've been communicating with the city engineer, Mr. Gary Alderson, on a list of items that we're going to remedy. And these, essentially, the road was totally removed and replaced. That was the contractor's choice to do that, which made sense, the deep cuts and whatnot. It wasn't required for the contract, but that's the construction method they chose. In putting that road back, there's some areas that may be a little higher in places. It's difficult to put a road back to match curb. In a lot of areas, the curb has been displaced and leveraged from trees and whatnot. Is retrofitting back to an existing curb system. But we have a list of about around G and Tillman, some down at Wilson, in front of Brown Funeral Home. There's a couple of issues, point issues, that we're going to go back and address with the contractor next week, meet him on site either Monday or Wednesday, and see if we can't come up with a good solution to fix those. Now, I know making Talmadge, Popeyes, McDonald's, you see a lot of flooding there. I know that it's historically been a lot of flooding, but we're going to try to leave it better than we found it. If there's a way that we can work on a curb line or something like that to get better drainage, we're going to do it. Try to leave it better than we found it. So we're still working on that project. The record drawings are in hand now. They're under review. Once those are finished and we're finished with this list of ponding issues, we'll go close that project out. There's one last thing the contractor's working on, and that's killing the water service from right up front of McDonald's, the old pump station 4019 that we decommissioned out in the middle of the 17 right away. So that'll finish that project now. All right, project 421 Mansfield Street sewer replacement. Now, show you a show and tell picture for that one. So this is they're wrapping this is a confluent box. So you'll see your storm drain coming out here, the city storm drain. It's literally another 100 feet or so to get across Reynolds Street to a curb inlet box, and that'll wrap up the storm drainage. But another example of the plans that we worked off of did accommodate for this conflict of an existing 10-inch ductile water main. It was right in the way of the storm drain as the new storm drain was being laid, so we had to incorporate the conflict box, and that's what's happening there. So we'll be wrapping that up hopefully by tomorrow and moving on beyond that to finish up the storm drain. But the city engineers working closely with them to do that. We still have some work in Bay Street right away, DOT right away. In facilities, I talked about that. The project, there's a section of 12-inch water main that runs through another conflict box that's tidally influenced. Well, the ductile iron water main in there has become very corroded over time. The valves are not functional anymore. The valves, replacement of the valves is not part of the original project, scope of the project. The contractor gave us a change order of about $40,000 to replace 2 12-inch valves just to facilitate them to be able to replace that section of water main. We thought that was a little excessive. In our water distribution department, Eric's not here, but they actually have the equipment. Eric, thanks, man. They actually have the equipment coming in. It's called a CERT valve. It's a brand of machine that actually sit on there that can insert a valve hot. Don't have to take a large section of town out of service to do this, and we think we can do it there more cost effectively than the change order we've been presented with. We're just waiting on equipment to arrive and the training period with the rep when they get here. We're going to see if we can get a demo for 2 12-inch valves, and we know where to put them.
Be the 2 valves.
Yeah, so that's we're hoping to do that in-house rather than we had a change order with the contractor. Once that's done, now the hires has been on site, the paving contractor that Stone Construction is subbed out to. They've been on site this week. They've got actually base down on Reynolds Street by Morgan's Cleaners, down about halfway down to the pump station 4002 area. They're supposed to be in next week starting to do paving. The curb and gutter guy is in and out. A large amount of the curbing is in, but there's still a lot left to do. Some gas in there. So hopefully we'll see some paving happening in that project soon. Project 503, Canal Crossing Water Enforcement Improvements. That is the Glynn County project. They allowed us to install an upsized water enforcement mains. And that project is complete. The issues outstanding on that, we had to go back and forth with the contractor on the record drawings. One thing we're doing in planning and construction inspection is we have survey grade GPS equipment, which is it's billed as centimeter grade. If you get less than a foot, that's pretty good. So having access to that new technology, or that latest and most accurate technology, that's all we're using now. We're not using map grade, which is, you know, tens and 20s of feet. We're using less than foot, sub-foot accuracy. So as these pipes are exposed and being put in the ground, we're taking every opportunity to shoot fittings, valves, top of pipe, etc. And we're updating our GIS mapping for them. It's really paying off. So we go back to find these things years later when the grass is growing and the sod's in place. It's we can walk in and find exactly what pipes are. So what it's doing is it's allowing us to truth record drawings, and we're scrutinizing record drawings, which having come from the consulting field in past life, sometimes construction drawings get turned into this record drawings with a couple tweaks here and there. Don't like to see that. We're holding people's feet to the fire and not accepting less. So that's there. One other issue I do want to point out there at Canal, across from McDonald's, there's a pipe that the contractor put underneath Canal Road. When they installed it, it was via directional drill. There was a blowout, large void created. We pointed out there was an issue. Sure enough, the road slumped. If you drive through there, you can see a patch even today, and it appears to me that it's possibly even slumping some more. So I have concern about that. I don't want Joint Water to accept infrastructure where we know there's an obvious problem. We're letting the county work out how they want to warranty that work. I would recommend a specific warranty for that section or extended warranty or anything like that. So the tricky thing is also the DOT right of way, so the DOT officials are very keen on it as well. We don't want to accept that liability knowing there's an issue there. So that's one last item. Project 504 is the pump station. Pump station essentially complete. We just got the last warranty document we needed on the flow meter. So that's done. Once again, record drawings. It was a lot back and forth getting those actorized from the contractor. That's done now. That'll fall off the list. Pump station 2032 505. That was complete. That you'll see that one fall off the list. That was the one down Frederick Road. Project 701 is pump station 4048. Got some good pictures of this one. And if you have time, it'd be a good one to go see. It's a pretty impressive project. So TV Landmark, Husky Bell is the design engineer. TV is the same one that did our directional drill on Sea Island Causeway, the same one that did our Frederick Road project. Went off great. This is pump station 4005. Kurt's very familiar with this. He's spent some late nights out there, as well as his crews. This is an example of some of the challenges we hit. This is late one night. Contractor we're out there with, they're trying to get benched down to get their, there's the railroad tracks right here. You'll see another picture where you can see it. The railroad tracks run by. There's two sets of tracks, one Norfolk Southern, one CSX. We had to get two separate railroad permits. That was a challenge in its own. This is a jack and bore, which is, I'll show you a picture of what that is in a second. We're pushing a steel casing underneath the railroad tracks. It's the only method that the railroad will accept. Then we'll thread our new force main, 24-inch force main through that. but you have to de-water. You know, we hit water at like 4 feet, you can see it's wet right there. So the concrete benched down, but when they were doing that, putting their header pipe in to de-water, they were gonna let it sit over the weekend to dry up, come in Monday morning, start doing what they need to do. Right, here is a 2-inch line, water line feeding off a 6-inch transite line, which everybody knows the delicate nature of the transite, feeding the station. So it wasn't marked, we didn't know it was there. Contractor countered that, not a major issue, but it delayed it by a day or so. Here's the railroad tracks. Here's the bore pit with the machine inside, the jack bore machine, steel casing, starting being pushed. See the scale of that. That's looking down in the pit. That's essentially after casing's all been pushed. And it's looking back the other way. You can see the scale of equipment and everything that's involved to do this. You got your augers and everything set up on top of the hill. There's the augers poking through the casing. That pulls the dirt out of the casing as you push it along. There's senior inspector having a good detailed discussion with Harry and Ellis. This is part of 4048 project. Speaking of new technologies, learning from lessons past, especially in large receiving manholes where you got a big force main dump a lot of water, wastewater into a manhole. It's just a ticking time bomb. The Cruel Master, right? Sewer's the Cruel Master. Over time, it's going to degrade the concrete. We said, hey, let's try another technology, HDPE. This is plastic. It's 100% plastic manhole. Came out of Mulberry, Florida. You can see the scale of it sitting next to it. But that's my little pocket knife right there. That gives you kind of, I think it's DR11. But that's 24-inch sub-outs sticking outside, and they'll weld that to the new force main, which is also HDPE. So expect the life of this structure, and 100+ years, they say. So that'll be something to see when it gets set. We'll try to put word out. If anybody would like to see it, it should be pretty interesting.
Now, does it float?
That's a great question. So let me go back to that. It's a great question. So it's maybe tough to see here, but there's a flange, a base flange here, and there's actually an engineered ballast concrete will be poured in place. So they provided the calculations, our engineer confirmed. You actually set it, drop the whole set it, and pour your concrete ballast on there to keep it from flooding. And then also on top of this is a engineered reinforced concrete cap that'll set. This actually sits in the middle by Norwich Commons on District. It's actually in the traffic. So by all means, we don't want it in that.
And you can you can buy the concrete boxes with the EPD and HDPE liners already in it. So the lining material has studs on the back, and they just cast it in concrete. And what they do with the openings, you just run your HDPE pipe inside, and they put a ring underneath that over it, and then they weld that to the pipe to the lining inside. I put quite a bit of that in for Hercules, and we ran a 54-inch pipe for them and buried it in the ground. And put, I think the manholes weighed about, must weigh about 30 tons apiece. They put the concrete. I guess they won't stay in the ground.
Yeah. They don't want to move.
Because when it was all put in, it was sealed. I mean, there was nothing going to get in or get out.
Right.
And except one end down here and one end way down yonder. But the HDPE, anytime you use it, you won't be any better. You won't be any better than HDPE.
The cost on this was about 19. I think it was about 19. So you figure concrete structure like this set is about 10. You rehab it one time, that's another 10. How much hassle is it to go back in and rehab? You got to bypass, you're in the middle of the street, all that. You never want to touch it again if there's any change. So it's well worth the cost, the upfront cost, the total cycle cost. All right. Any other questions on that one? Good project. We'll put notice out whenever it's going to be set. Love to have some commissioners out there to check that out. Let's see. Okay, project 702 North Mainland Sewer Basin Reroute, $11.7 million of the $15 million was SPLOST 2016 monies. Phase 1 is already in motion. That's Constantine Constructors, design build project. That's a handful of stations, 28, 48, 5, 6, and 110 that are involved in that. This is to get the initial limited amount of capacity available planned out by February of 2018, is what the plan is, barring any other weather events. They've already decommissioned the underground fuel tanks. We've got next progress meetings October 10th, coming up for that, so it's going very well so far. Don't expect any issues. And moving along to engineering design in progress. Project 501 Alder Circle. Commissioner Bowen has stepped out, but he put me in touch with the design engineer that worked on Bayberry. Is a similar project in Sea Palms, and I'll work to see how they managed to get a much cheaper price when they put that project out. Project 602 is Holly Street replacement. We are going to submit that, if not tomorrow, on Monday, for bidding to Glynn County. Already been in communication with the project or the county on that project. So that is to wrap up some leftover SPLOST monies, SPLOST 2005 monies that that were done. That's in Glen Haven area on St. Simon's extension of gravity sewer. Project 702 North Mainland Sewer Basin Reroute. This is, we've already talked about phase 1. This is phase 2, 3, 4, and possible 5. And if there's any particular questions about that, but we're in preliminary engineering, finalizing how we're gonna, the downstream improvements required in between where we've left off the force main off Ogden, down Whitlock Street, and then down to the area of the pump station, 4035. So, the 703, 4003 decommission, that's in the city limits, pump station 4003, and we're also in the preliminary engineering stages of that project. Project 704 Canal Road at Lincoln Parkway is a 12-inch water main loop. Plan is to do that in-house and utilize surplus 12-inch PVC main from other projects. We'll design that in-house out of planning and construction. And 705 is the same with Hot Solids, the old Jessup. Is a short section of water main that will connect, provide us with another loop in the system. One thing, and I want to give a shout out to procurement. Let's see here. We kind of, from afar, kept an eye on their project. They get all the credit for this. They did a fantastic job. Matt, kind of through Pam's leadership, Matt spearheaded this. He did a great job. He was said he was not a contractor, but he did a fantastic job watching over this. But we try to keep an eye on it for him as inspection. So this is forming outside, get the pad, the bollards in place. Just outside the door here, encourage you guys to take a look at the installation, final installation. OPI came out and used their crane. This is the generator from pump station 4134, whatever it is, way out there on the north end of the spur. Was sitting out there not doing anything, essentially. Finally got it set in place on the pad, real good install. I don't know if you can see this right here, but you see where the cursor is? I think it left its former home just in time, or not soon enough, obviously, but sooner rather than later. That's a nice little bullet hole somebody put in it. Surprisingly not a few more. It was a sitting duck. So anyway, its new home is there behind her, and I think it's going to be more than sufficient to run this place. Yeah, but we need it. You can see how high this sits up on the belly tank. If the water ever got halfway up here, we wouldn't be in here utilizing this building anyway. But great install. Procurement did a great job on that project. So I think that's all I'll give. Unless there's any other questions, I'll have to answer.
Thank you. Okay. session.
We did.
Yeah? Personnel issue? Okay, so can I have a motion going to executive session?
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand.
After 3 minutes.
I'll give you 4 this time.
No, just let you go right now.
There will be a vote. Please come back out of the